What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be talking about 10 mistakes that all beginner quarterbacks make and that you want to avoid. Now, fellas, the first mistake has to do with the grip. A lot of times what younger quarterbacks do, because maybe their hands aren't as big, so they want to grab a hold of the ball a little bit more, but actually it hurts the spin and the accuracy they have on the ball, is that their ring finger will be on the third thread of the football. So when you have the third thread of the football around this ring finger, you're grabbing the fat of the ball. It is very, very hard to have any type of control and any type of spin. And guys do that because maybe their grip's a little weaker, their hands are smaller because they're new. So it's very important that you strengthen your grip as a quarterback. But where you want to be with that ring finger, and trust me, it will feel better even if you have smaller hands, is you want to move that ring finger up to that second thread, because that will move your index and your middle finger a little higher on the ball. And those two fingers are your spiral fingers. And I can only spin the ball if those two fingers are near the top half of the ball. So just make sure you make that adjustment to throw a better spiral. Now, the second mistake beginner quarterbacks will make, and generally this is because a coach or somebody who's maybe not as qualified to be a coach taught them this, is hold the football up by their ear. There's not a single NFL starter, you guys, that holds the football up by their ear. Not a single one. Because when you're holding the ball up by your ear like this, you're extremely tense in your shoulders and your traps. It's a nice concept. People think, oh, well, you're up here, you could just go straight to the throw, but that's not how quarterbacks generate power. Quarterbacks generate power from something called torque, which is when your shoulders rotate back as your front foot steps to the target and your hips rotate before your shoulders, and that whipping effect is what gets us power without putting pressure on my arm. So when you're up here, you can't do that because you're too tense. So you just open up and your elbow, the football is ahead of your hip, and that puts a ton of pressure on your arm, you guys. So please do not hold the ball up by your ear. Don't hold it too low, right at your chest or your right pec, but nice and relaxed so I can rotate my shoulders and have the hips fire them through. Now, fellas, before we get into the rest of this video, if you are a quarterback watching this or a wide receiver and you would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, we're traveling out to 15 different cities across the entire country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. So guys, if you want to sign up, go to that very first link in the description below. That's where you can get all the information. Our next camp is going to be in San Francisco, California. Then we'll be heading out to Orlando, Florida, Phoenix, Arizona, Columbia, South Carolina, Seattle, Washington, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Nashville, Tennessee, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Austin, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, Denver, Colorado, Columbus, Ohio, Boston, Massachusetts, Salt Lake City, Utah, and finishing it off in Los Angeles, California. So guys, all of our camps will sell out probably within the next 3 months. So make sure you take advantage of the fact that we have open spots, and we're promoting it very early this year to make sure that you guys can get our open spots. So again, very first link in that description below. Let's get back to this video. Now, the next mistake beginner quarterbacks will make, fellas, has to do with the way they take the football back. So remember, we talked about how quarterbacks generate power is from their shoulders rotating back and their hips rotating through, whipping the arm through. Now, a lot of QBs love to lift the ball straight to 90 degrees. Now, it's a nice thought because think about it. If you lift to 90, and then you rotate, you just go straight back over the top. But here's the issue, you guys. You do not achieve something called external rotation, which ties into your arm strength. So a lot of times when guys go up to 90 like this, and then they rotate through, at the freeze frame of their throw, it looks like this, where their elbow's even with their hip, and the football is not tilted back, trailing behind their hip. This position right here is called external rotation. All the guys who have the strongest arms in the NFL, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes is a great one, Aaron Rodgers, they all get to that external rotation position where their hip is ahead of their shoulder. And the only way you achieve that, guys, is by not lifting straight to 90, because to get external rotation straight from 90, you almost have to dip the ball behind your head, and that's not a good position to be in, and it's not an efficient position to be in when you have pads and a helmet on. If you get to this opposite L position, does it need to be a perfect L? No. It could be a little lower, it could be a little higher, but somewhere in this range, so when your hips rotate through, that football is trailing behind, and that external rotation is how we could get a little bit more power to my throws. Now, the next mistake beginner quarterbacks make, fellas, is an overstride with their front foot. Now, again, there are a lot of things mechanically that does to you, which creates, a lot of bad habits, but the reason why it's a problem is because the longer this front foot takes to get down, the longer your release is going to be. So as you get older with football, if you're playing youth ball, middle school ball is going to be faster. Middle school to high school is going to be faster. High school to college is way faster than high school. So the longer your release is, the less accurate you're going to be. You're going to be late on throws. Defensive linemen have more of a chance to take your freaking head off, so you need to have a fast release. So the faster your front foot gets down, faster your release is going to be. Now, you don't want to be that guy that turns in place, because that's bad too. You're going to pop up, you're going to lose a lot of power. Your stride should be about 6 inches. That's where we want to be. Now, an analogy I tell my quarterbacks that seems to work pretty well is pretend you're standing on the edge of a cliff. And if you step, you're gonna fall off the cliff. So just step to the edge of the cliff. And that generally helps them get that front foot down faster. So maybe that's an analogy you could take home and add to your game. Now, the next mistake beginner quarterbacks will do, fellas, is have a wide base to combat the long stride. That's what we don't wanna do either. So a lot of QBs will be here with their feet just outside their shoulders, and I've heard a lot of quarterback coaches teach this. You know, you look at like older school clips of like a guy like Drew Brees, he had a really wide base, so everybody's always like, oh, well, Drew Brees had a wide base. But again, the game consistently evolves. What worked for Drew Brees, he's a freaking generational talent, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, is probably not gonna work for most of us. Probably not gonna work for the 99% of us that play this position. And when you look at the top tier quarterbacks in the game today, because the game's constantly evolving, you can't blame him, that's just what was like in back then, if you will. Most of them do not have this wide base, because when you're wide like this, your weight can't be loaded on your back leg, right? So remember, as a quarterback, talked about this in the beginning, how I generate power is when I step to the target, I want my shoulders to rotate back. I can't do this properly if I don't have most of my weight on my back leg, like 65–70%. So when you're wide and you go to take a stride, you don't have enough weight back here to be able to support the rotation of your shoulders. So guess what happens? Your back hip's out of the equation, and you throw, and your elbow and your shoulder are ahead of your hip, which puts a lot of pressure on your arm, and you lose power. Where you want to be, guys, is this, like, feet should be under your armpits, not outside your shoulders, under your armpits. And we want to take that 6-inch stride, keeping this under my armpit, so when I decide to rotate, I actually can rotate and get that hip to go through before the elbow and the ball to take pressure off your arm and increase the power that you have. It's harder with a narrow base to take a short stride, but it's much, much better long term if you can get that down than having a wide base and sacrificing power and arm health. Now, the next mistake I want to discuss with you guys is something that will limit quarterbacks' arm strength, and that's just focusing on driving with their back hip and not opening up their front hip. So this is something like, if your front hip rotates, your back hip's going to rotate. So a lot of QBs think when they're in their base, they may have a good base, good stride, good take back of the ball. They try to drive and rotate with this back hip, but it's almost like you stop at a certain point if that's all you're thinking about. So something that helped a lot of the quarterbacks that I train is I tell them to think about somebody grabbing the front of your shorts and pulling your left hip, if you're a righty, it'd be your left hip open, your front hip open, because that will bring the back hip. So being here, instead of driving the back hip, how about we focus on rotating the front hip? Because that will help this back hip rotate more, and you'll rotate fully, which will help us get more power, more velocity, and more distance on my throws. Now, these next few tips, fellas, or I guess mistakes, are going to be all for the mental side of the game. So the next mistake that younger quarterbacks make is not having a pre-snap process. So what does that mean? So a lot of times on plays, let's use a concept, we call it a smash concept. So a smash concept is you have a hitch on the outside and then a corner from the slot, right? So our read key on that is going to be the corner. So the corner, if he crashes on the hitch, I throw the corner route. If the corner backpedals, I throw the hitch, right? Now, when I throw that corner route from the slot, it's a different type of throw depending on the coverage, right? So if I have two high safeties and they're playing the deep halves, corners are sitting in the flats, that's cover two. But I know that there's this deep safety, so if I'm just looking at the corner and I don't go through a whole process of reading the entire defense, I'm not going to know what ball to throw. So the corner sits, I might throw the corner route with some touch. Guess what? Safety makes a play, right? And then if it was like one high safety, maybe I could throw it with a little bit of touch. So you need a pre-snap process, which is the process I recommend is looking safeties, corners, box. Okay, how many safeties are there? Are they deep? Are they close? Are they wide? Are they tight? Okay, I look at the corners. Corners will always lie to us, so we can't rely on them fully, but it can tell us a little bit about the coverage. Are they pressed? Are they off? Does it look like they're bailing? Are their eyes on the receiver or the eyes on me? Now look at the box. Is it a 4-3? Is it a 4-4? Whatever. So all that information tells me, okay, it's cover two. Okay, I know if the corner sits, which he most likely will do, it helps you anticipate the play a little better. I'm going to throw that corner route, but it's going to be on a line. So you need to have a pre-snap process as a quarterback if you want better and faster decision making. Now, the next mistake quarterbacks make, fellas, is not spending extra time with their wide receivers. So this is something like, as a quarterback, we're only as good as our wide receivers, right? So like if you're a QB and you have a quarterback coach, you know, maybe you train on the weekends, you throw with your dad or whatever the case may be, or after practice, you want to stay and get some reps in, you need to be working with your receivers, because especially if your receivers aren't up to the level like that maybe you're at, or maybe they're not as talented, maybe they're younger, whatever, like you need to bring those guys up to speed. That's kind of part of our job as a quarterback, is to make everybody around us better. So if you're going to a quarterback coach, invite 3 or 4 of your receivers. I guarantee your quarterback coach is probably going to appreciate it. Ask him, obviously, if maybe you're a little hesitant on it, but then after practice, get your starting receivers receivers to stay, work some routes at them, work some timing routes, because again, that extra work applies, or it shows itself on the field, but also that makes us better as a quarterback because we are only as good as the receivers and the players that are around us. Now, the next mistake beginner quarterbacks make, fellas, and this is really beginners at any position in football, and that's not being coachable. Now, coachable is a term that is thrown around in like the coaching world, the football world, any sports world. Everybody's like, oh, you got to be coachable. What does that exactly mean? Well, coachable, like, what's the purpose of a coach? A coach is there to tell you what you're doing wrong and to help you fix the mistake, right? Being coachable is making sure that you don't make that mistake a second time. And that's the level, or I guess you could say the standard that you have to hold yourself to as a quarterback. Because as a quarterback, you're the leader on the field. Whether you like it or not, everybody's looking at you. And if you're that dude that makes a mistake and you keep repeating it, let's say you throw an interception on a play and then you make the same exact mistake again, it's not being coachable, you guys. It's going to piss off your coaches because they're having to repeat the same thing over and over again, is they expect you to get better. They expect you to not make the same mistake twice. That's the whole purpose of practice in the first place. So guys, do not make the same mistake twice, especially at the quarterback position. As long as you are learning, you have nothing to worry about and your coaches will be very pleased with you. Now, the next mistake that beginner quarterbacks make, really all quarterbacks, not even just beginner, even guys who have been playing for freaking 8+ years, is not communicating with their head coach or position coach on their staff about things that they have worked on with their private trainer or private coach. So this is something I deal with on a daily basis, right? There will be an athlete that I'm training and we're working on a specific skill. Not to say that what the coach at his school is teaching him is wrong or right or whatever. It may just be different. A lot of times I'm willing to say that it's wrong. Like, I've had quarterback coaches who have taught guys, like I've had quarterbacks who have had releases that are like probably around here, and they're like, no, you need to be up here, you need to be high, and they spend all this freaking time trying to fix this kid's form when he's had thousands of reps of a certain motion, a certain habit. They just don't simply understand how hard it is to correct those types of things. That's not something that you could correct overnight with just like a few reps. It takes a freaking long time, and they're trying to implement this stuff during the season. It just doesn't work, right? So the right way to go about that situation is to have a conversation with your coach, but have it respectfully. Like, you shouldn't be the guy that's like, well, no, I'm not doing that. My trainer says to do it this way. He knows more than you. That's only going to create a big divide between the coach and the trainer, who ultimately on the same team because they want to see you do well. And also it's going to create a divide between you and your coach. You need to talk to him and be like, hey coach, listen, you know, I've been working on this with my quarterback coach for a while. It's been working really well for me. Like, here's kind of, maybe some clips of like NFL guys doing it, or maybe some clips of you throwing in the past, not throwing so well, and then making improvements and throwing good. And just take it to him and be like, hey, listen, like, is it okay if I do it this way? Like, I really respect your opinion. And, I feel more comfortable doing this. Talk to him. Do not just do your own thing. Have a conversation with him, and I guarantee you he will probably appreciate that. But communication is the best thing for any type of relationship, especially a relationship between a player and a coach.